Hey everybody, my name is theDeModcracy, and today I'm hyped to launch our first entry in the Hype Train Retro series. If you haven't checked out the announcement video, be sure to give it a look for all the details on the series as a whole. As a quick summary, in this series I'll be taking a look at some of the most hyped games of all time. By that I mean games that are still regarded today as some of the best ever made by players and critics. I want to evaluate these games with you not for how good they were when they released, but how good they actually stand up today. And today we're kicking things off with one of my favorite childhood games, Shadow of the Colossus. Now I'll always disclose my own experiences with the games I review in this series. In this particular case, I played this game on release when I was a kid, and I fucking loved it. I cannot emphasize enough how much this game made an impact on me. When I think back on some of the first influences I ever had to make my own videos, this game might have actually been where it all started. I remember my friend and I playing this game and thinking it was so beautiful in the way it played, I'd be willing to watch it back on video. So you know what we did? We pulled out an old VHS recorder and we recorded our gameplay. That's right, back in 2005 I made my first ever Let's Play on a videotape. A massive reason for this is the visuals. Not only the actual style of the game, but it is incredibly well shot throughout. I say shot almost as if it's a film, but that's how every moment of this game feels. The cinematography to this day still blows me away. Every bit of the environment was created with incredible care to make it feel as if you're traversing through a grandiose world that is just as large in scale as the Colossi that inhabit it. And if you think riding aggro through the expanse of the land is well done, the Colossi fights are on another level altogether. The developers made a very smart move, allowing you to hold a button that lets you lock onto each Colossi in a way that is chosen incredibly well. It frames each fight from the back of you all the way to the massive foe opposing you. It creates that David and Goliath atmosphere in almost every battle, and I can't get enough of it. As the game progresses, these get more and more complex, with battles ranging from underwater chases to dashing across a desert and mounting an aerial beast. When it comes to the graphical quality itself, of course it's not the best. Keep in mind that I did record this on the HD remake on PS3, but the face models are still pretty ugly. The world itself also could have used a more diverse color palette, but I think this choice may have been intentional to make the world feel on the verge of lifelessness. Adding it all up, the magnificent camera choices, monumental environments, and epic battle shots more than make up for the lacking character models and drab color. If there's one thing I can praise the game for just as much as the cinematography, it's the soundtrack. This game boasts 42 original tracks that are simply excellent. Each track has a specific use in the game and has differing purposes. Some tracks are very somber and mystical, which add a great ambiance to traversing the game. I'll admit that with the world being so empty, there's concern that you could get bored when traveling to and from each Colossi, but with the soundtrack accompanying the visuals, I never once found myself looking down at my watch. Then when the battles engage, the soundtracks become very intense and add the perfect pressure to each encounter. And of course, there's the epic track every time you mount a Colossi, and the melancholy tune every time one falls. My only complaint of the soundtrack is that there's very few tracks that stand out on their own for me. I'm not sure if my music volume was too low or if the game just flew by too fast, but I feel like I can only remember like 4 or 5 of the over 40 tracks from memory. But maybe that's just how well the whole thing flows together. I think sound design is best done when it's least noticed and adds to the scene subconsciously, so it may be even more genius than I give it credit for. The actual sounds of the game are good. I don't think there's anything that stands out to me as, whoa, that was amazing, other than perhaps the force of the sound when you penetrate a Colossi with your sword. The sound is very vicious and adds vitriol to your urge to take it down. Then there's the voice acting, which is very limited. However, when it is used, it adds to the very mystical world with an echoey tone that continues to make the land feel vast. But dear lord, every time you call your horse. Really though, that's just nitpicking. The sound design is absolutely perfect for the game, and I don't think they could have done it much better. Alright, let's get right into the meat of it. I remember this game being two things in terms of gameplay a decade ago: intuitive and challenging. Well, decade ago theDeModcracy, I've got two things to say to you. Controls have improved immensely over the years, and you sucked at video games! I'm just gonna say it, the game is clunky, very clunky. In fact, I went back 3 or 4 years ago when I got this HD collection to play the game, and I actually put it down after the second Colossi because the controls were getting on my nerves. But this time I took a more calm approach and tried to put my previous bias aside. And it's still clunky. Not as bad as I remember from then, recommend, but it's not great. One thing I did this time around was change the controls. First, I changed the inverted camera. That's a very subjective criticism, but the camera's tuning just felt off and really awkward. Easy enough fix though, and very small issue. The choice that really baffled me was mapping jump to triangle and calling your horse to X. The X button has always felt like the natural choice for jumping to me anyway, and that's because it's the easiest to reach from the right stick. Again though, this can be very easily swapped in the menu, so with a little tweaking, the game's controls can be gotten to a very easy to use state for you or me. That didn't remove some of the clunky jumping, but it definitely wasn't that bad anymore. There is one thing I found terrible though. Horse combat. Fuck horse combat. I found it incredibly difficult to balance kicking my horse like crazy to keep it speedy while I tried to aim arrows in a wonky way with my admittedly terrible aim. With that out of the way, I will admit for the most part controlling the horse is very easy to do. Once you get on it anyway, I can't count how many times I tried to mount my horse and ended up jumping next to it like an asshole. And while I did admit it's easy to control the horse, sometimes it can plain out suck trying to navigate the map. That's because the light ray points you directly toward a Colossi. But guess what? Sometimes there's an entire fucking mountain in the way. So what do? Go around, of course, only to find out that you're still wrong, Christopher dumb shit. Turns out you had to find this small little nook in the mountain to know you were going in the right direction. For the most part, this wasn't an issue, but there were 3 to 4 Colossi that had me scratching my head for a while on how to reach them. The final thing to talk about is the actual fight mechanics. As mentioned before, you can easily lock onto the Colossi. While this is useful in some cases, you're better off using free aim. Now, I remembered this game as being an epic battle between Colossi and Boy, but the reality is these battles are really nothing more than puzzles disguised behind a boss, which is fucking brilliant. As a kid, I didn't even realize I was completing puzzles and using my head. I thought I was just banging my head against a wall until I won. But now I realize every battle is about using the sword's light rays to reveal weak points and then find a way to mount the beast. Then you have to balance your stamina to effectively reach the weak points, and once you do, charge the attack and you're a winner. All in all, the gameplay mechanics were a bit of a mixed bag for me at first, but with some tweaking, you can make them a lot more intuitive. I will also say as the game progresses, the controls become more and more natural, so perhaps it's the game's controls that are clunky in a minor way and they just have a decent learning curve. For me though, there's no doubt that the process of hunting down Colossi that are essentially giant puzzles was a brilliant design choice. And that's where we get into the fun of it. Of course, I do like the fact that this is really a puzzle game more than anything else, but one thing I noticed is that the game is incredibly easy once you know what to do. I had forgotten pretty much everything from my childhood save for a few tips and tricks, but I didn't have much of an issue figuring out the majority of the Colossi in a matter of seconds. Once you do, it's more about dealing with the Colossi trying to shake you off than it is mastering a mind game. And boy, they will shake, and shake some more. It gets really trying at times when you have one final blow left to deliver, but you just can't get the charge off your sword because it's time to boogie. Of course, the Colossi do have to do something to defend themselves, but I can count the number of times the giant succeeded in knocking me off in the entire playthrough on one hand. Which brings me to my main point. The game overall is very easy. Without too much guidance, I managed to complete the game in about 6 hours. With 16 Colossi, that means I averaged about 22.5 minutes per Colossi. That counts cutscenes, travel time, figuring the beast out, and defeating it. And I messed up a couple of times here and there, so I imagine it can be completed a lot faster. Let me just say I am not someone who thinks quantity trumps quality. Give me a 10 out of 10 game that is 6 hours long over an 8 out of 10 game that is 60 hours long any day of the week. So while I don't think the length matters too much, the ease of figuring out the Colossi's puzzle mostly makes this a platforming experience. And unfortunately, that can be downright frustrating on some Colossi. But then again, it's an absolute pleasure on others. Of course, I'd love to talk about each one in detail, but that's beyond the scope of this video. Which is why I'm happy to tell you that I'm going to be ranking each of the bosses from worst to best in another video very soon. Ultimately, I think the game's pretty damn entertaining because of the artistic nature, sound design, and mostly enjoyable gameplay. There are a few blemishes, but I still enjoy conquering the challenge it does have quite a bit. It's just unfortunate that not all Colossi are created equal, and some are way more fun than others. Before you even begin the game, you start with a very mysterious creature that leads the protagonist and your character Wander to a forbidden land. Why is the land forbidden? Well, it appears our hero has heard an ancient being is being sealed away in the land and has the power to restore the life to his maiden, Mono. After showing that he possesses a weapon of immense strength, Wander gains the attention of the being, Dorman. In agreement that he will seek out and destroy the Colossi scattered across this land, Dorman says he can restore life to Mono, though it will come at a price. It's a classic dilemma in media. How far are you willing to go to save a loved one? Well, Wander, with the help of his friend Agro, is willing to take on massive monsters that could smush him with utter ease to do it. This dude's got some balls. But as you take down each Colossi, you begin to notice that Wander seems to be growing more twisted and demonic, your first clue that something isn't right. After defeating your 12th Colossi, you see that the Illuminati is onto you. No, really, this is a group of warriors led by Lord Emin, who seems quite troubled at the events taking place in the Forbidden Lands. At the behest of Dorman, you hurry to kill the remaining Colossi. As you traverse the bridge to your final foe, it crumbles from beneath you. With a last-ditch effort, your friend saves your life at the cost of his own. This moment is full of so many swirling emotions. As you're gripping with your humanity for the deeds you've been doing, you've brought a dear friend willing to accompany you through hell and back right to its door. It makes you question just how selfish you're being. But there's no turning back now. With the final Colossi defeated, you return to the Maiden to find Emin's group already there. And this is when the revelation finally sinks in. You weren't completing some heroic quest to slay monsters to restore the life of your loved one. Instead, you were trying to restore the life of a loved one with the cost of putting the entire world at risk. What do I mean? Wander actually stole this sword from Emin's group, and it was the only weapon that could slay the Colossi. And those Colossi weren't beasts, they were fragments of Dorman's soul. The entire land was condemned to prevent that demon from ever being unleashed again. With Wander being a shadow of his former yet pathetic self, the men strike him down, only for him to go apeshit with the soul of Dorman and try to go on the offensive. This moment is utterly brilliant. Putting the control in the hands of the player here, you have a choice to try to attack the men trying to save the world from your evil, or be passive and let them seal this demon away for good. Either way, you end up on the losing end as a sword is thrown in the basin. You're once again given control as you helplessly tumble backward to your fate. Yet another moment I can't praise enough for giving the player control, because even though the outcome is already decided, it forces you to feel just as helpless as the protagonist. And at the end of it all, the bridge collapses, sealing up the land, and the maiden awakes. And the horse is alive! Are you joking? Can we get a replay of that, please?
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not.
Well, apparently you are fine. Then there's this whole weird thing with finding a baby with horns in a pool where Wander perished and Mono takes him up to a secret garden for, I don't know, you decide. Really though, this moment gave heavy speculation that this game had ties to Ico, the developer's previous game. Whew. With that summary down, what do I think of it as a whole? It's damn spectacular is what it is, and the gravity the story is able to accomplish is something only a video game can achieve. The twist in the end that you were actually a fool doing the bidding of a demon rests on your shoulders as much as it does Wander's because you controlled him throughout the journey. This makes you question if it was all worth it. Aggro's supposed death, killing so many Colossi, many of whom were just docile creatures, and leaving yourself as a shell for a demon to occupy. And that the game gives you no choice throughout this is perfect. It leaves you helpless but to revel in all the mistakes you made, leaving you feeling as hollow as Wander does. Even if it's worth it to you to save the girl, you have to think she might feel a little hollow knowing you resurrected a fucking demon to do it. Oh yeah, and you're dead too. An eye for an eye, I suppose. Putting it all together, you've got a game that tells a beautiful and tragic story that puts a burden on the player, a fantastic art style and score to accompany it, not flawless but still pretty good gameplay that has some fun if not easy puzzles, and damn if this isn't one of the more enjoyable experiences I've had in a long time. Nearly every moment of this game was an absolute pleasure to play, and I have a hard time putting it down. In this case, I absolutely think this game still lives up to every good thing that's been said about it, and it holds up well for even new players to experience it. So if you've never taken the challenge of slaying the 16 Colossi, I can't recommend it enough. I give this one a 9.4 out of 10. So I hope you guys enjoyed our first entry into the hype games of days past. I look forward to playing and reviewing more games with you all, and I've already got our next one chosen. But we're jumping on the retro hate train for this one because
it's time to kick ass and chew bubble gum. And I'm all out of gum.
If you're hyped for our next review and Colossi rankings, be sure to subscribe to the channel. With this being a new series, I would be incredibly grateful if you all hit that like button if you enjoyed it. It really helps me out, and so would sharing it with a friend if you found it entertaining. Thank you for all the support, much love to you all. And as always, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.